All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of the Everneset Real Estate Investor podcast. I am one of your hosts, Spencer Sutton, and I have with me my two co-hosts, Matthew Whitaker, Gray Hall. Guys, welcome back to the show.
All right, I'm going to jump in here because last time we screwed the intro up. We didn't know who's going to go first.
So I was sitting about 2 feet from a mic.
Yeah,
making sure you knew the batting order.
He was just hanging out.
You were sending me the signals. No,
Yep.
Pumped to be back. Really excited. Really excited about these podcasts and getting this national podcast going. So pumped about our topic today because I think a lot of people think about this often when they're thinking about getting into real estate.
I think it's the fun thing with a lot of these are questions we're having constantly with investors to be able to put it out to lots of people and kind of answer and talk about topics that we're kind of having one-on-one conversations with and be able to help a ton more people by doing this. So excited, about this one.
Yeah, we're going to
totally agree.
We're going to answer the question here. Like, when do you know, when should you quit your day job and become a full-time real estate investor? I think this is the first thing that people think about when they start thinking about investing in real estate is passive income enough so that I can, if they have a day job, how much do I need? When can I quit my job and start doing this full time? I think this is just one of the first things people think about.
Well, it's kind of like the goal, right? Everybody wants to be a full-time real estate investor. They want to not have to show up at a day job. Everybody kind of dreams of that day they can walk in and tell their boss, here's my 2 weeks notice. And the bad news is it's 2 weeks late.
I can't wait to tell you that. It's coming, Matthew. It's coming.
Yeah. Well,
no, it's this dream of mailbox money, right? You wake up, you wake up and you go out to the mailbox and you have a bunch of checks in there and sounds beautiful.
Well,
Really
we've met people that have done it too.
Yeah.
Probably have some of them on this podcast. And I think, to begin with, like we've got to kind of set the stage for, what constitutes retiring, what constitutes essentially getting out of the day-to-day of having a job. So why don't we kick it off and we can do our thing.
All right. So I think the first thing we need to kind of address is the question that a lot of people have is like, how many rentals does it take to quit your job? Like, is there a number that you need to shoot for? And we talked a little bit about this. I remember Gray bringing this up when we talked about setting goals. And we really talked about setting income targets as opposed to house targets, because everything's going to be different depending on if you're looking in, different class of neighborhoods, different areas of the country. So a lot of things to consider with this. What are your thoughts here, Matthew?
Yeah, my first thought is this is going to take some time. We keep saying real estate's not a get rich quick. I think one of the biggest mistakes investors make when they first get into the business is they retire too quickly. And so we can talk about what that means, or not retire, but just basically get into full-time investing. One of the most powerful things you can have when you're like growing a rental portfolio or investing is a job, because that gives you access to all different types of capital, gives you access to all different types of things you can't get when you don't have W-2 income. Like, it is shocking to me that, and this is no longer the case, but when I first started my business, the people that worked, that were W-2 worked for me. The bank would give them access to money, but me as the business owner could not have access to that same money. Like, that doesn't make any sense, but hey, that's the way the world works. And so if that's the way the world works, having a day job and having W-2 income is very important to like kind of the first steps in this.
But I think people can see it as a limiter though, because I think this takes time. And so I think that people think the more I can focus on this, the faster I will get there. But it's just kind of more nuanced than that. I mean, being bankable is a very important thing, or having a partner who's bankable. I think if you're going to go out on your own and you don't have a source of consistent income, maybe your spouse or your partner has that. And so I think just thinking through those, like, in order to kind of supercharge that, you've got to have access to capital. A job, one, gives you that in a paycheck, but two, you can show your W-2. And it really is tough if you're a business owner to kind of, I mean, we even say it's tough to even, just kind of prove financials. And so for some reason, the banking system looks at that and they're just, risk averse, and kind of the safest thing is going to be a W-2 income.
That's the exact thing that Matthew and I did when we started investing in real estate. We went and found partners who had really good jobs. I mean, there were people, well, my partners were people that I knew that we had actually owned a couple other businesses together. And so because of their income, I was able to step out and we were able to get over $1 million line of credit at the bank so that we could pay cash for houses. And when you're able to step in and tell an owner, I will buy your house, we'll get, as soon as we get clean title, we'll close within 24 hours. It's a powerful motivator. Like, we will pay cash. I'm not going to try to shop it around and try to wholesale it out to somebody else. Like, I'm literally going to pay cash for your house. So it's like having those partners, like you said, Gray, can be extremely beneficial.
Yeah, there's no one way to do it. I think we're just kind of like highlighting what are the things to think through, because I think people want control and I think they want options. And I think the type of person who, is diligent and saves their money and makes good money and invests probably doesn't just want to go retire on the beach. It's probably, I think they enjoy this as a hobby. And so I think that's some of the attractiveness of it is this thing that has become a hobby on the side. One is great for passive income, long-term wealth building, and they want to spend more time in it. And so I think I understand the desire for people to kind of want to get in there, and there's no right path. I mean, it could be quitting your job if you've got a partner, or it could be building it up on the side and getting to a cash flow number per month that at least covers your, kind of living expenses. And then thinking through, okay, on top of that, covering my living expenses, I've got to continue to funnel money back into this because rental investing is a capital intensive business. Where is that source of income going to come from? And so having a plan kind of after you cover your expenses, where's the additional capital going to come to continue to grow the portfolio? And it may be the portfolio, stabilize. And so there's all these kind of things you can get into the nuance, but I think at the beginning, it's good to kind of, start with the end in mind and know some of these things before you go in and, turn in your 2 weeks and lose that bankability.
So there's a author out there by the name of Robert Kiyosaki, which is super famous. He's famous for the book Rich Dad, Poor Dad, but he has an interesting game out there called Cash Flow or something
Quadrant.
Like that. Yep.
Yeah, Cash Flow Quadrant. Yeah.
And the whole idea is that at the beginning of the game, you essentially get an income. And it's kind of funny because in a normal world, you would want, the lawyer, the doctor income. In that game, you want the smallest amount of income possible because what you're trying to do is replace that income, right? Like that's the whole goal of the game, which I actually played in all through college as we started getting interested in money and interested in passive income. But I think step one is just understanding how much money do you really make, right? And one of the things you've got to realize is not only do you have to replace that, I think the game you're just trying to replace it from a cash flow perspective and essentially get out of the rat race. But when you are investing in homes, you've got to have essentially operating capital on top of, so you don't want to essentially hurt your business by getting out of a job and starting to live out of your business. So not only do you need to essentially fund your job, but you also have to fund your business. And so I think like being really clear on what it takes to live and where your current lifestyle is and what you're willing to do to maybe less than that lifestyle. I don't know, maybe you don't want to, but what it's going to take to replace that. And then also understanding on an annual basis what it's taking to run your business. And then if you ever wanted to continue to grow the business, then what kind of capital it's going to take to continue to grow the business. I mean, at some point you realize like this is not as easy as just replacing an income, because the last thing you want to do is hurt your business, not be able to fix something because you're living out of your rental portfolio. And yeah, we were very lucky, Spencer, to have partners at the time because they were able to have the W-2 bankable income, and we were able to go out and we were able to live essentially out of the business, which for me was very stressful. And that's the other thing is you want to make way more money than you make in your job in your rental portfolio, because it is stressful when you're having to live out of your business.
Yeah, it started getting stressful, especially, we were living like just with big deals, right? So it wasn't a constant stream of income like rentals can provide. And I think, part of the danger in as I've talked to a lot of investors, I sense a lot of eagerness and like they want to get started. They want to get started maybe sometimes in a big way. And so what we're talking about, Matthew, what you're just talking about is just being very realistic about your projections, like being very realistic. I sat down with an investor. He and his partner were very, very excited about getting started. And he asked me, should I buy a portfolio? Like, should we raise the money and buy this portfolio? And I was like, I probably wouldn't. And he's like, well, tell me why. And I said, well, more than likely there's properties in that portfolio that are not going to be in your buy box. And so you're going to get some bad with the good. And then you're going to have to deal with those. Are you going to keep them? Or are you going to sell them? And so anyway, regardless, they went and did this. They bought a portfolio of homes and ended up right out of the bat, started having major repair issues. Most of them were occupied. All of a sudden, they were on month-to-month leases and tenants started turning in notice. And so being very realistic about your projections. And in my opinion, I think like starting out and buying one and allow you to figure out the game while however you want to do it, but just understand what the expenses are going to be, what you can expect, because there's always going to be unexpected things that happen. So just some things to think about there.
Yeah. And I think that it kind of feels like a shortcut, or you want to, because I think a lot of people, they have a number of units goal, and that's kind of what they want to get to. And they view this as kind of a shortcut. And I think at the end of, setting goals, kind of listen to that last podcast that we talked about. I mean, setting kind of these incremental goals of replacing X amount or having X amount of cash flow. And I think too, there's wisdom in seeing how that plays out over 3 years. And when we talk about the average life cycle of a tenant, I think it's a good thing to see what that looks like, or have, partners who know what that look like, going through a full kind of tenant cycle with them living in there. And I think just kind of learning one as you go. But I think there's definitely wisdom in that. Portfolios come across, our team's desk all the time. A lot of the times 60% of houses look good and the other 40% I don't want to touch, but it's kind of an all or nothing thing. So, and those are things you can implement later, but just kind of be careful with trying to get the cheat code to kind of get there as quick as possible, because it might not be the fastest route. It might feel fast because you kind of want this progress. But I think knowing it takes time if you're going to go through the rental route. It's different if you're looking at wholesaling or flipping is kind of, but those are basically businesses you're willing to start. And I think at the end of the day, looking at that, you're starting another business. And so
that's right.
Making sure that has, the ability to sustain on its own, because you're going to eventually need to hire people for it to continue to run if you want this thing to kind of really be big. And so know that you're starting a business on the side and kind of look at it from the onset. Those people who have done it like that, I've seen them be more successful and kind of stick with it over the long run and kind of run into less issues when you have that kind of mindset that you're doing that as a business, opposed to, kind of just a side hobby, which, it could be called either, but I think looking at it as a business is a healthy way to make sure you, kind of appropriately calculate how much operating capital you need, how much, what your expenses are going to be just on the business side, so that you can be cognizant once you want, to make that leap full time, you kind of have some experience in there.
And I think that's what's exciting. What I'm excited about with this podcast is we're going to be extremely transparent. We're going to start buying properties, and we're going to just we're going to lay everything out, everything that like the cost from houses in Birmingham to other markets that we're in, Chattanooga, Little Rock, Denver, Atlanta. So I'm excited about that. And we'll make all that information available. We'll come back and do deep dive podcast on these properties and give you kind of a bird's eye view of what's going on.
I'm pretty scared to be doing that, honestly. I mean, here we are putting our money where our mouth is, but I think it'll show people that it's not all unicorns and rainbows. One of the things
is we want people to get there. I mean, I think that's the thing, is like, I think that's a great thing to chase after. And we're trying to learn from all of the mistakes that we have made and that we've seen investors made to help you kind of get those shortcuts. And I think that's the exciting part, is helping people to get those goals. Cause I have seen it change people's life. I have seen real estate investing change people's lives and their financial situations. And it doesn't always take 10 years, but doing the right things and making sure you're not making those mistakes. Like, I'm excited to help people learn a lot of the dumb mistakes that, we have made or, seen other people make.
Yep.
But I think 10 years is probably a good plan, right? Most businesses, if you read the book Good to Great, it talks about, Jim Collins in that book talks about, most of the businesses were in business for 7 to 10 years before anybody started to write about them, before they started to get traction. And I think, many of the investors that we've talked about said, hey, it took really 7 years for us to get real traction and start to pay these things off. And my cash flow started to really, that flywheel started to really spin for me. And so I think, the ability to focus, that's one of the things that I've seen about really great investors is their ability to focus when things are going good, when things are going bad. Because when things are going good, one of the things you do is you start to say, well, I'm great at this. And you start to get really kind of like Spencer did back in 06, 07.
I
wasn't like that. Yeah, I wasn't like that. But then when things are going bad, you start to wonder, am I really good at this? I mean, am I doing something wrong? And so the ability to focus over long periods of time with your plan, which we talked about in the last episode, that's what the best people do in this business is that they ride the ups, they ride the downs, and they push on through to kind of the other side. And so I think it's really important that people understand that focus is a big key of this thing.
I mean, Matthew, I think a perfect example was you and I spoke with an investor out of California, Michael Zuber, and literally he was just disciplined to stick with it every single day. He had a full-time job every single day. He did his research, decided if he needed to make offers, and eventually built a portfolio. Over 15 years, he replaced his and his wife's. Both of them had six-figure incomes, replaced both of their incomes, both of their six-figure incomes, and then went and said, I'm done. But it wasn't big ups and downs. It was just steady plotting, getting that flywheel turning.
Yeah. An hour a day is pretty powerful. Like if I do an hour a day for the next 10 years and invest it in my business, then that's a pretty powerful, you're not going to solve everything on the first day. You're not going to solve everything on the first week. But just like working out over 10 years, if I worked out an hour a day, it's reasonable to think I'm reasonably certain that in 10 years, I'm going to be in shape, right? I'm not going to be shaping at the end of week one. I may not be in the shape at the end of year one, but over the course of time, I will get there. And so being consistent with your focus is so incredibly important.
Let's talk a little bit about that. I mean, let's talk about some of the struggles that we have seen with investors as they try to build a rental portfolio. We had our own struggles, Matthew, back in the day, but we have dealt with literally thousands and thousands of investors over the past 13 years as we've grown Everneset. So let's talk about some of the challenges that they've faced as they've tried to do this, try to build these portfolios. What do you think? What do you think one of them is?
Well, first one is just team, right? Like at the end of the day, not having the right people on the bus is incredibly like a huge mistake. And that's the sad thing is we have people come from all over the country. It's hard to vet people from an integrity standpoint in short bursts of time. And we'll probably do a episode on your investing team, but I'll tell you, having the right team is just incredibly important. One of my favorite quotes, Lou Holtz said, I've coached good players and I've coached bad players. I was always a better coach with good players. And your team, you're going to be a better investor with good players.
That's right.
And so making sure that your team has your best interest, understands the business, that's just incredibly important.
Yeah. Go ahead, Gray.
Yeah. Just another one that I was thinking you're investing from like a strong financial place, just kind of knowing where you stand with what your capital is. Cause I've seen that it also plays in the second thing, being patient for the right deal. I've seen people get burned because they just want to get started. And I think there is some wisdom in the law of the first deal, just kind of like getting going, but not just any deal. So I've seen people be burned by that. You can also die from good deals. I mean, if you have too many good deals that might be great in appreciation in the long run, but you don't have the capital to kind of go through, an eviction or a big renovation or a big repair. So it all kind of starts with your capital and just kind of knowing what is realistic. So starting with the end in mind and kind of working back with that, but then also being patient for the right deal and the right time, because a bad deal is really stressful, but also you can have a lot of good deals that look good on paper, but if you don't have the team in place, or you don't have the capital, or you don't have the right strategy, both of those things can make it extremely stressful. And at the end of the day, that's not what people get into this for. But it can really kind of cause you to say, hey, is this the path I want to go down? If you don't start with the capital and then you rush into the bad deal, or you rush to kind of grow too quickly.
I think another issue that I've seen investors face is just the feeling like they don't know enough to pull the trigger, to make an offer. And so they do research, they look in forums, they are reading everything they can about a specific area or a strategy, and they never, ever pull the trigger. And so information without implementation is pretty useless. I mean, you may have all the head knowledge in the world, but if you're not willing to at least start making offers when you have enough information, then you could like just talk yourself out of great deals. And so I think I've definitely seen investors do that.
It's like this dichotomy too. I mean, I just said like, don't rush into it. And you're saying, and so it's kind of like finding the middle ground there. But I think I know the middle ground.
I mean, at the end of the day, I think another thing that people get wrong is just not knowing their buy box and not understanding. I mean, that basically solves the problem that you two are talking about. If I have a deep understanding, like somebody says, well, I'm gonna buy a house in Denver. Well, Denver's big. Like there's a lot of Denver.
Yep.
And, somebody needs to go in and say what price they're going to be willing to pay, what neighborhood they're going to buy, just become an expert in a certain area. It's so incredibly important to be even in a place like Birmingham or Little Rock, where the market is much smaller than a Denver. You still want to be very strategic. Maybe take a zip code in one market and become an expert at that. And then that way, when houses slip into your buy box, or when one comes across your desk or your computer, you can say, hey, that one fits into my buy box. And then once you become an expert at that area and you feel good and you get the reps in and you're starting to buy houses there, then you can add zip codes to that. But I think a lot of times people try to be a little too broad and we'll basically not focus on the right area. We'll not focus on an area, and then that'll slip. They'll not be successful because they'll be trying to buy all over Denver and should be in one spot.
And I think within the buy box too, knowing that you're not going to hit home runs every time. And I think that singles will get you there, singles and doubles. And so kind of probably laying that out within your buy box, like this is kind of minimum. This is what we're targeting. If you're waiting for the home run deal, especially in this environment in 2021 that we're at right now, lower inventory, there's a lot of, just really a lot of competition out there. That's how I've seen investors make progress this year is, hey, I'm okay with a single. This is just is a solid deal over the long run. It'll build. And so I think kind of that would help me visualize, okay, I know the buy box, I know the zip code. This is a solid double. It's got some really good upside and kind of the downsides, a lot lower. And so I think that'll help you kind of be able to pull the trigger faster.
Yeah. I have seen investors like not even have a buy box, but just fall in love with a spreadsheet of, hey, this is going to promise this return. And so I'll never forget, Matthew, sitting down, you and I sat in the conference room with some investors from Utah, and they brought a sheet with a list of houses, probably 10 or 15 houses that had around $850,000 that they were willing to spend. Somebody had shown them all these houses and said, hey, this is a great portfolio, great buy. They slid it across the table to us. We looked at it and we sat there and looked at every house. We knew the areas, we knew what they were getting into, and we just slid it back across and said, keep your money. Like, don't buy this. This is going to end up really, really bad for you. And people just fall in love with a return that they see on the spreadsheet. No, they did not buy it.
Okay, good. The other thought was if they were just going to give that money away, you and I would be willing to split it 50-50.
Right. That's right.
Because you can't make money with all, like, it's shocking for somebody from California or New York or one of these big kind of coastal markets to come to Birmingham or come to Little Rock, come to these smaller markets and see what they can pay for a house. I mean, it's just shocking. And I think their thought is, well, certainly I can't lose money paying $10,000 for a house. Well, you can lose money paying $10,000 for a house.
You can lose more than $10,000.
Oh yes. It is shocking. I've done it.
Yeah.
So again, that gets back to kind of what I said right off the bat, is having a local team that has a vested interest in making sure you're not put into the wrong home. And, frankly, just to carry on to that, is having the wrong agent that just wants to do deals is probably not the right person to have, right? You want somebody that we always joke, you date your agent, but you marry your property manager. So making sure that if you are deciding to get into real estate investing and you're going to be in the rental world, then you're going to want to have somebody that's got a tag along with you through this investment. And
right.
That's us, frankly, as a property manager.
All right, guys, anything else we want to add here about this subject? I think this has been a great discussion.
No, I would say, like, the big takeaway from this is don't quit your day job.
Yeah.
It's incredibly important to be very mindful of what it's going to take for you to retire. And I think it's an admirable goal. And heck, if I said in 10 years you can retire because your rental portfolio is going to be cash flowing enough that it'll pay for your lifestyle, most people, it'd be mind blowing if somebody was listening to this and they're 35 or 40 or whatever, and they could do that by the time they're 45 or 50. Like that's pretty crazy, but it's going to take time. And all the gurus are selling get rich quick. And I've just never seen somebody do that. And I've been doing this almost 20 years. So would be very, I think it's an admirable goal, and it should be part of the plan, and you should, chase after that. And again, it's possible.
All right, everybody, this has been great. If you have enjoyed this episode, make sure you subscribe to our channel, share it with your friends, and leave us a review. We'd love for other people to find the podcast, and that helps us get the word out. So this is another episode of the Everneset Real Estate Investor podcast, and we will be back in another week with our next episode.